Hi, my name's Andrew Penkethman. I'm the Managing Director and CEO of ASX listed Ardea Resources with the ticker code ARL. Ardea is in the process of completing a definitive feasibility study on the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project, which is Australia's largest nickel-cobalt resource and one of the largest and most strategic nickel-cobalt projects in the world. We are partnering with Sumitomo Metal Mining and Mitsubishi Corporation to complete a $98.5 million DFS on the Goongarrie Hub, our most advanced asset.
Very good to see you, sir. Been a while. Thought it's time for a catch up with and trying to understand where you're at the moment. Obviously, we'll talk about the DFS. Maybe let's start with, the nickel market. Lots of different views about what's happening in Indonesia, Philippines, China, and ex-China. How are you reading the nickel market at the moment?
Look, we're very focused on advancing the Goongarrie Hub in an environment where the Australian nickel sector has been hard hit, but the corollary to that is we got improved access to skilled personnel, appropriately experienced key service providers and consultants to be able to advance our definitive feasibility study. We think the highest value and lowest cost ore has been largely mined from Indonesia, and that they will continue to deplete their mineral resources and ore reserves, and we think our timing to production in 2029 correlates very well with independent expert analysis indicating that the nickel market will move back into deficit around 2029, 2030, and we will see a strong corresponding increase in the nickel price. But just to be very clear, we can be cost competitive at the current prevailing nickel price as well.
Right, and do you think there is this kind of not East versus West, China and ex-China? Obviously, China was working very closely. I think in terms of the beneficial ownership of some of these smelters in Indonesia, seems to be 75% Chinese focused. Do you think that nickel is spoken for, and ex-China, projects outside of China, are going to be more attractive to Japan, Korea, Europe and the US?
Yeah, very much so, Matt. I think that's a terrific point. Both Indonesia and, as you rightly point out, dominated by Chinese-funded nickel production. One country can't provide the entire world's needs, and we've got all the countries you mentioned, Japan, United States, Korea, India and the European Union in particular, all pushing for diversity of supply and supply chain security, and we think we're perfectly poised being just north of the city of Kalgoorlie border.
Right, and so let's talk about the asset, because what I want to get into is your relationship with these strategic partners that you brought on board. But so tell us about the grade, the scale, and I guess the complexity of the metallurgy involved here.
So we'll go back to the global Kalgoorlie Nickel Project. So it's a series of projects within an approximately 100-kilometre arc northwest to east of the city of Kalgoorlie border, which is the mining capital of Australia and, in my opinion, the mining capital of the world. All of our projects have direct access to infrastructure, and our most advanced project, the Goongarrie Hub, we've got direct road and rail links passing through our granted mining leases where the mineral resources are located. We're focused on the 4.1 million tonnes that contain nickel within the Goongarrie Hub, working with our partners Sumitomo Metal Mining and Mitsubishi Corporation on the DFS. Because of our location, our infrastructure costs, our transport costs to market, they're all going to be very competitive. And we've also got direct access to skilled personnel in a city that has been built around the resources sector, initially on the gold boom. When gold was first discovered in Kalgoorlie about 140 years ago. So the local community understand and support the resources sector. So that gives us a big head start. And then on the the mineral resource and ore reserve, Ardea completed a pre-feasibility study on the 5th of July 2023 and defined a plus 40-year ore reserve producing on average about 30,000 tonnes of nickel metal per annum and 2,000 tonnes of cobalt metal per annum in the form of a mixed hydroxide precipitate.
Right. Okay. So obviously this is large, long life of mine as well, with some of these bigger players like Sumitomo and Mitsubishi. What exactly is the agreement in terms of these strategic partnerships? Who gets what?
So the consortium collectively are spending $98.5 million to earn a 35% interest once the definitive feasibility study's been completed on our wholly owned subsidiary, Kalgoorlie Nickel Proprietary Limited, and it's KMPL that holds the Goongarrie Hub. Their final 15% will be issued upon the consortium making a successful final investment decision, and they will assist facilitating project development debt and assisting Ardea. And we're all aware of the likes of JBIC and the strong geopolitical relationship between Australia and Japan in particular. So, both the consortium and myself, we have had funding discussions with the likes of JBIC and Export Finance Australia, and we'll continue those discussions as we progress the project.
Right, and this $98.5 million bucks, so is that gone in, or is that going in once the DFS is delivered? So I'm trying to work out the order.
The $98.5 million has been going in. Once we complete the first 50% of the DFS, which is expected in the coming months, the consortium will be issued their first 17.5% in KMPL, and then, as I mentioned, once the DFS is fully completed, they'll have earned a 35% interest in the project.
I'm trying to work valuations here, okay, right? So they're putting in $98.5 million, and that gives them effectively a third of the company. Market cap today about $100 million. Obviously, some discrepancy between how they're valuing you and how the market is valuing you, and that might be a reflection of what we talked about earlier in terms of perception around the nickel market and how Indonesia is going to sort of maybe try to control pricing, etc. So what would you say to people listening, watching this, reading about this, in terms of where the kind of future growth and value comes from?
It's partnering with two industry giants that have been developing mega projects right around the world for decades. It could be a very large porphyry copper gold deposit in South America, or you look at the BMA joint venture between Mitsubishi and BHP, very large coal joint venture in Queensland. These companies have experience developing very large projects right around the world, and they can see the strategic nature in the Kalgoorlie Nickel Project, the long mine life, the cost competitive bottom cost quartile operating cost, our location, Australia being classified as one of the best operating jurisdictions in the world, and in particular the Eastern Goldfields of Western Australia. So all those factors, I can't speak for them, of course, but we'd be safe to assume that they are contributing to their investment decision and desire to partner with Ardea to develop this globally significant project.
Is there an expectation from you that both those groups will be involved in the kind of FID feed process as well? Because ultimately, one assumes they're going to want the offtake and as much as they can get.
Yes, spot on, Matt. And when we executed the shareholders agreement on the 30th of August 2024, we have allocated 75% of the offtake to the consortium, and in terms of the eventual shareholding, it'll be 40% will be to Sumitomo Metal Mining, 10% to Mitsubishi Corporation, and the remaining 50% to Ardea. And with a lot of the project debt discussions we've had, a lot of the large potential funding providers will comment that ideally you need to have at least 70% of your offtake allocated to well-regarded partners. So of course the consortium meet that classification, and we see it pivotal in helping us bank and ultimately develop and operate this project.
Well, that's the important bit, the banking here. Okay, so let's look at how that. What I want to get out of this conversation is an understanding of how kind of battery metal companies actually move their projects forward. You know, I think the exploration bit is very, very exciting. We've got to find enough of this stuff in the ground, and then work out how to get it out efficiently. And then you've got to insert yourself into the capital markets and say, right, how do I fund this thing? And then you get to a point where you could actually be able to sell your goods. So obviously, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo will help access the market because they can be the off taker, as it were. But the banking bit, clearly they've got big balance sheets. But how does that help you in terms of your cost of capital going forward when you're moving into a kind of FID feed stage, which is go spend some money on that, and then the actual build phase? How do they help you?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, with their large size, industry contacts and balance sheet strength, it'll be imperative. So when Ardea retained 100% of the project, and we'll go back to our 5 July 2023 PFS, that the capex was put at $3.1 billion Australian, or about $2 billion US. I could appreciate people's scepticism at those numbers, but that's why we've concluded our strategic partner process with what I believe to be the two best companies in the world to partner with us. So they'll be using their balance sheet strength and industry contacts to help Ardea also in being able to secure the most favourable project debt development terms. And we're also having a lot of detailed dialogue with both the Australian and Japanese governments to unlock the ultimate funding strategy to make sure this project moves forward as quickly as possible, which is the desire of all of the partners, and ultimately is developed to provide those flow-on benefits to both our local, state and federal economies and communities here in Australia, but equally with the majority of the product expected to go to Japan, those positive flow-on effects to the Japanese economy as well.
So access, does it make it cheaper? I know it makes it easier, but does it make it cheaper for you? Is there an aspect of this we say, well, actually, we better kind of get competitive quotes here on some of the funding, or is that just a headache too far?
Look, I think historically, if we look at the cost of debt, we can go Google searches, experience, we can see that some of the cheapest debt in the last decade has predominantly come out of Japan. So that's a fact. I can't currently say we'll be getting 60% debt, for example, at 4% interest rate. But we can look at those historical precedents, and we can look at the links that our partners have and the relationships Ardea has been developing in its own right to be safe to assume we are targeting the most cost competitive capital, and that's a priority for all three partners.
Right, and so do you manage that part of the conversation yourself, certainly with the Japanese government agencies, or are you part of a consortium in that sense? How does it work?
There's very close collaboration between Ardea, Sumitomo Metal Mining and Mitsubishi Corporation, and the relevant partner with the strongest links with the respective potential funding institutions will lead those discussions. So in the case of Japanese bank-based export credit agencies such as JBIC, it'll be the consortium leading those discussions. But in the case of export credit agencies here in Australia, like Export Finance Australia and the National Reconstruction Fund, it'll be myself or the Ardea team. and myself leading those discussions.
Right, and what's the timing on all of this? I think you've talked about it second half 2025 for the DFS completion. Are you still on track?
Yeah, we are. So the current schedule's late this calendar year, and then we're going to move into a second funding phase, feed and pre-commitment activities, and then ultimately the major final investment decision expected in the first quarter of 2027.
Right, and what are the expectations from these partners as well? And sorry, I am very much focused on the kind of commerciality of where you go from here. Unashamedly, I have to say, because we speak to so many companies who perhaps don't actually understand the process. It's kind of clear. With the expectations from your partners in terms of the timing, not just through of the DFS later this year, but more importantly, the phasing after that. Because again, I think timing in this nickel market is going to be interesting for you from a equities basis, but in terms of a revenue business building basis, they're going to be wanting to kind of drive that side of things. So again, delicate balance for you somewhat.
It is, and look, that's my overriding priority as Managing Director and CEO of Ardea. It's working on our funding strategy very closely with our partners, and today we don't have all the answers, yes, but we've got a number of different tools we can deploy. We mentioned 75% of the offtake goes to our partners. Well, what about the remaining 25% offtake? There's things like offtake prepayments, there's potential royalty streaming, there's potential grants and different funding that could be available from both the Australian and Japanese governments. So yeah, we're deep in discussions on all of those options to ensure the best outcome for the project to keep moving forward. And you can imagine with the likes of Sumitomo and Mitsubishi, they're not going to get involved to just spend $98.5 billion on the DFS. They want to see this project developed as a secure source of nickel-cobalt that meets the high ESG standards that we expect for many, many decades.
Well, it gives you some level of confidence that the DFS will be not for the market, but for actually understanding how this thing gets built properly. So with regards to that money they've allocated, how much has been spent, how much is left to be spent, and how much sort of certainty are they looking for over these kind of the build costs going forward?
We're close to 50% of the DFS budget being expended on the project. Currently on schedule for the DFS to be completed late this calendar year. Japanese consortium and Ardea, very focused on cost and schedule and most important quality. And you can imagine a high quality DFS with that budget. It's not a DFS that let's say could arguably be completed for $20 to $30 million and you use it to promote your company and pump up the tyres. And this is a project that we want to develop and we want to succeed. So hence the large DFS budget and the focus on quality first and foremost, then cost and budget.
Unless you've come through the economic study phases, I mean, had you obviously cost inflation, and it was a big concern during COVID, but it still remains there, certainly when it comes to staffing costs, fuel costs, etc. Do you expect to sort of see the numbers kind of match what you've looked at before, or what will we be expecting a small increase?
Look, for the most part, I expect the numbers to come in similarly to the PFS. I think there was very sharp inflationary pressures and supply chain disruption leading up to that, particularly around COVID. But we've seen a lot of those key price inputs, and let's use international shipping freight as an example. But things are normalising, and we expect that normalising trend to continue. So obviously we've got to complete the DFS and get the financial metrics out there. But no, to answer your question in short, no, we're not seeing massive pressure increased, and that hence some of my opening comments on the nickel price and the nickel market. Not all projects were made equal. It's the unique attributes to Goongarrie that enable us to be cost competitive even at these current low nickel prices of about $15,000 a tonne. And we believe that'll put us in a very strong position.
Right, and obviously, given the kind of size of this, the life of mine at the moment, you're not going to be. There's no need to look at expanding the resource anytime soon. You're going to get focused on getting into production. That's it.
We are, and it's a really good point, because we've assessed 6 of 9 mineral deposits within the Goongarrie Hub in Ardea's 2023 PFS. Those same 6 deposits are being considered as the base case for the Definitive Feasibility Study. But there's still a lot of upside with those remaining 3 deposits. And again, with a 40-year ore reserve, well, you could rightly say to me, well, how much do you need before you can pull the trigger to develop the project? But once we're in operation, we will have ample opportunity for brownfields expansion using that sunk capital, so that our capital intensity for any brownfields expansion will be a lot more effective. So there's those 3 remaining deposits within the Goongarrie Hub, and then similarly there's the other projects that host about 2 million tonnes of contained nickel that Ardea continues to hold 100% of within the Kalgoorlie Hub, for example. And we can't get ahead of ourselves, but you could see it's not too long a stretch of the bow to say, okay, well, Goongarrie's up and running. What about, we've got 2 autoclaves, what about adding a 3rd autoclave, for example? So that thinking's very much in Ardea's mind. Obviously, any decision is a collaboration between the consortium and Ardea, but you can see that optionality. We'll start, but we will be able to expand if that's deemed in the best interests of the project and supported by all 3 shareholders.
Okay, and if I look at, we talked about a few things there. Obviously, getting strategic partners on board and getting them to buy into an equity position in the company, offtake there, and markets expanded, and access to cheaper capital. So you've dealt with a lot of the kind of, I guess, long poles in the tent when it comes to building out a battery metals business. Let's go back to something I mentioned earlier, which is obviously this kind of disjoint between sort of the equities market and how industry is valuing you. You've got 60% of your shares held by about 40 shareholders. I think you talked about maybe there or thereabouts, right? You've got to maybe look to introducing new institutional investors into this. At what point do you think they step in and go, actually, this thing is getting built. This thing is going to be one of the few nickel producers ex-China. I should start investing in this company. Where do you think that moment is?
Look, I think that moment any day now is, that people can see us making meaningful progress on the Definitive Feasibility Study already on our register. We've got one very large and successful company, so Golden Energy and Resources are a substantial shareholder, but plus 5% on our registry. They're part of the broader Cinemas group, and an analogy that's been provided to me is that they're equivalent to Australian Wesfarmers company, so huge conglomerate. They're part of the largest pulp and paper company in the world. I believe their average annual turnovers are about $100 billion. So we've got a very large, successful, well-regarded company like that on our share registry. Would we like more? Absolutely, at the right price. But I feel we've got some heavy hitters on our share registry already, and as we continue to advance the project with our partners, I think the penny has to increasingly drop. Either you get on board and get part of a long life, large strategic nickel-cobalt project that's in Australia, completely independent of some other overseas jurisdictions that currently dominate nickel supply. Now's very much a great time to get on board.
Seems like it, and I think share response in the last month would suggest that. In fact, the last, quite frankly, 6 months would suggest that as well. It's a nice reminder of where you're at the moment. Exciting year for 2025 for you in terms of deliverables and obviously some of the decision making that you're going to be able to make. So appreciate your time. Stay in touch with us. Let us know how you get on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. Great to catch up, and yeah, really pleased to see the progress the company's made since we last caught up, and I've been dreading your hard-hitting questions. You've been making me nervous. I haven't been sleeping at night.
Well, we think you're doing a great job, so we'll speak to you soon. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Great to catch up.